Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Valpo Football Weekly, presented by our friends at Lakeshore Bone and Joint Institute. Brandon Vickery with you. Glad to be joined by the head coach of the Valpo football program, Landon Fox, as we get set for homecoming Saturday. Figures to be a big crowd coming up this Saturday against Drake. First, we'll look back at this past week's game at Morehead State. Let's jump right in. Let's kind of break it down by each phase and start with your offense as you've had a chance to look back at the film. What were some things that you saw that you need to do better? And then maybe what were some things that you give credit to Morehead State defensively and what they were able to do on Saturday?
Yeah, in terms of credit, they came out and a little bit different defensive front and structure than they had shown prior. They've utilized it a little. It's not like they just invented a new defense for that week, but it wasn't their primary structure that we had seen throughout the preparation. With that being said, we still have to have the ability as players and as coaches to be able to adjust. To those situations. It's gonna happen during the season. And so I put the onus on all of us of like, hey, we have to be able to adjust in game to then be able to produce and capitalize and finish drives and score touchdowns.
You have an interesting situation in the sense that you have three quarterbacks who have all had really bright moments at times during their Valpo careers. What factors went into the quarterback decision this past week, and what factors will you look at going into this week?
Yeah, with Karan, there was, for him, just some soreness in terms of his ability to actually go out and compete at the level that you want. Obviously, he brings a different dynamic with the ability to run and throw. And if he's not 100%, you have to be able to take that into consideration. And so, obviously, we felt very strongly about Mikey and what he would be able to do in the pass game. Not to utilize this as an excuse, but the weather conditions were a little bit of a factor in throwing the football, but not so much that you couldn't, be able to still be productive in what you're doing. So we have to be more efficient all the way around. We've been able to run the football, but we have to be able to definitely be more efficient in the pass game.
Talk about special teams, and we had talked in your kicking game that continued to be strong on Saturday. You talked about the kind of looking for that big play outside of the kickers on special teams, and it came from Alex Gavarowski when he blocked a punt through the end zone for a safety. What'd you see on that play?
Yeah, I did a great job, in terms of you said, you and I talked about making a big play, and they were backed up, and we talked about aiming points and how you want to, hit certain blockers and to put stress on the punt team, and he did exactly what we asked him to do to a T, and that's who he is. He plays with high effort. You know exactly what you're going to get. To me, that's the biggest compliment you can give a player when he goes out there. You know what you're going to get, and did exactly what we coached him to do, and then he obviously produced and was able to block a kick and create a safety for us. And too bad that thing didn't stay in bounds and make it a touchdown. But great job by him and the punt return team.
You had a situation where you were without several starters on defense. Defense got off to a rough start, two big plays on the first drive, but then bounced back from that and played well the rest of the day. When you look back at the film, what stood out to you from the defensive perspective?
I'd say this: injuries are real, and we did have some of those, but at the same time, you're only as good as your backups. And so you, again, don't no excuses. Okay, hey, weather, that was part of it. They played in the same thing. I'm sure they probably maybe had some injuries too. And so those guys that are your twos are one play away from being your one. And I know that's kind of sounds cliche, but it's real. And we saw guys come in and do a nice job of, George Trudanek got to see his first action in there and did a good job while he was playing. And Gavrowski, you talked about, he comes in and plays some, and Kamari Harris comes in and plays. And so you saw a number of guys defensively step up, and we're going to have to continue to do that moving forward.
Like about this week should be a big crowd, as I mentioned in the open for homecoming, and the defending champions will be here as Drake comes in. What are some of the elements that has made this Drake team a championship type team, and what do you have to do to be successful against them on Saturday?
Yeah, the word sellout got to me last week, and
Right.
to hear that in terms of our side being sold out, it just creates a bunch of excitement of, man, people are noticing, and we do have a good football team, but we will be challenged by Drake, who has done a really good job of retention. You see that they're playing with a bunch of fifth year seniors, a bunch of older guys. And then schematically, they do a really good job in all three phases. And they're in all three, they're big, physical, and aggressive. And that's what a Drake team has always been. If you look back in our time playing those guys, though, it's really come down to that last possession. And so we better be prepared for that again this year. And be able to handle that moment when it arises.
The chance for a sellout on Saturday, but I think as of now, for those of you watching, we do have room for you. If you go to tickets.valpoathletics.com, it's as important as ever to get your tickets early for what figures to be perhaps one of the biggest crowds we've ever seen at Brownfield for Valpo and Drake, a noon kickoff on Saturday, and we hope to see you there. We'll talk to everybody again next week on Valpo Football Weekly, presented by Lakeshore Bone and Joint Institute.